The Democracy Week here in Geneva this year has a theme on Alter Democracy, which shows just how much interest there is in social movements and grassroots forms of political participation. You started the Fridays for Future movement in Switzerland. What does it mean to you to be an activist in this day and age?
Being a climate activist for me is something where I can overcome my own fears and my frustration about the lack of political will, but also taking responsibilities. People in these positions, unfortunately, not taking the science serious enough. So I also have all the knowledge I need to see where the solutions are, where the problems lie. And for me, this is a form of my own expression. Of course, I am fortunate enough to be able to vote and take part in other political forms of democracy, but very often also young people are cut off this involvement, and having a pressure movement from the outside, but being based on the science, I think is very, very important to move on, because we have a very, very short time span left.
So this leads me to my second question. It's been now almost a year that we had these massive global strikes, youth-led global strikes in the area of climate change. Why do you think there's so much interest among young people?
I think there are two different layers. So one is really the science, which was already here before we started the climate strikes, but I think it's getting much more severe. So the latest intergovernmental report, basically the global report on the state of the climate, was really urging for an unprecedented change and really asking for a transformation. So of course this is very scary in a way that we really have to move everything to be able to change this in the next 10 years. On the other hand, I mean, we see it every day, we see it everywhere. I mean, in Switzerland, in the Alps, it's not only in the global south, in Africa and Indonesia and Southeast Asia, it's here. We see the glaciers are melting tremendously fast. We see how the snow is going back, our winter wonderlands are melting. This, of course, is a very sensible ecosystem, but we all see it with the heat waves, people are dying. So I think there is a combination of it's so visible now, and the science is getting so urgent that I think it's my responsibility, and many other people feel it's their responsibility to do something. And then, having non-violent civil disobedience, protests, strikes is one way of expression.
So let me ask you this. What are the different channels that you use, the methods that you use to push for your objectives? You've mentioned strikes, but are there other ways, other pathways for you to push for your goals?
Exactly. We started off as Greta Thunberg was doing the strikes on Fridays, basically saying this is the Friday for the future. So we want to kind of remember this moment. We really have to do something. The strike is one form. We also had some demonstrations on Saturday where everyone could join, but also there are various forms of non-violent civil disobedience. It's very important for us that everything is non-violent, that we are not harming nature or any person. So, for example, there was like blocking of the banks because the banks are still heavily investing into fossil fuel, and with this are actually working really against our own future. There was a report from the government which is saying that our current investments are going to increase of temperature for 4 to 6 degrees on a global average, which is leading to human extinction. And I mean, this is absolutely unacceptable. So I think it's not radical what we are doing, whereas it's radical what the current system is doing, while knowing that actually we are heading to mass extinction and a huge climate disaster.
That's very nice. So it's the current system that's radical.
Exactly.
Not what you're doing. The pandemic has hit now. It's been a little bit, about 6 months, I'd say. Has that impacted what you're able to do in your work in this particular area of climate change? How did it impact you?
Absolutely tremendously. I mean, whether the strikes nor any other form of outside expression gathering was possible anymore. And also here, as with the climate crisis, we listen to the scientists. As well in the pandemic, we have been listening to the scientists. What are they telling us? If they're telling us, stay away, not gather, stay at home, we have been doing this. There were other forms of solidarity actions in the community, which I think is also part of the solution to the climate crisis. Being able to support each other, interacting with each other, having more intergenerational exchanges is really, really
Yes.
crucial. Nevertheless, we couldn't really keep up this momentum during the crisis, because also the media, which is also known as the fourth force in democracy, was only talking about COVID, which was of course important. And what for me the biggest learning was that yes, we can do it. Honestly, I was not sure before if we can really do it, but now with the COVID crisis, the political system is able to move, even like in a direct democracy system as we have in Switzerland. The public is able to move and implement easy solutions in their own life. But also organizations, institutions, companies are able to change things they always told us it's impossible to change. And I think this gives enormous also motivation and courage again that we made it a little bit too late for the COVID crisis. We could have acted earlier. Maybe this is like another alarm signal that if we act faster, we have less to act afterwards, and it could have been easier for all of us to act earlier.
Do you then feel hopeful that the global community, the international community, will be able to respond to the climate crisis too? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I feel hopeful, especially because not being hopeful is a luxury we don't have. Especially people like me who have a well education, who have been growing up in a stable environment like here in Switzerland. So it's absolutely like we can't afford to being inactive or neglect the current science. So I do feel hopeful, but we have to radically change also the political system. It's not adequate that young people are not represented in the system. People below 18, for example, here are not able to vote or even getting elected. But also afterwards, many young people are out of the system. If you see the demography in the parliament or other institutions, it's very disproportional from the current society, and this needs to change. So I think we really need a better representation, especially in a representative democracy system.
Yes.
As well as we need a body which is really focusing on the long term. For example, there are future councils that we can support the day-to-day business of the parliament with something looking into strategies 10, 20, 30 years ahead, and then be able to mitigate the climate crisis and increase actions on sustainable development.